Mostly unknown to the world, how did a collection of far-flung British colonies develop into the energetic modern nation of Australia? Which turning points define this path, and how might they still affect the nation now? Imagine yourself early in the 1900s standing on a ship headed into Sydney's harbour. What could you see? The great wilderness, some colonial towns, and the start of a nation still under development. Australia's road to nationhood and its development over the 20th century is one of resiliency, creativity, and change. This film will travel across Australia's most important events of the 20th century, ones that shaped its position and identity in the world. From the founding of the Federation to the trials of war, financial difficulty, and social change, we will highlight the main events that resulted in the Australia we know today. Federation and the nation's birth, Australia was still a collection of British colonies, each with unique government and identity at the turn of the century. But in 1901, something extraordinary happened. The colonies came together to form a federation. This was not a simple process. Political leaders and ordinary citizens debated for years over what a united Australia should look like. Journey to Federation. Imagine a group of political leaders from various colonies, gathered in smoke-filled rooms, arguing over what the future of this land would be. Would they be able to agree on a common set of laws? Could they create a unified identity that would resonate with people spread across such a vast continent? Finally, on January 1st, 1901, Australia became a federation. This marked the birth of a new nation with its own government and constitution. But the journey didn't end there. The early years were filled with growing pains, economic struggles, social divisions, and the challenge of defining what it meant to be Australian. Early nation building, political and social challenges, Australia's economy was still developing, and many workers faced difficult conditions. But during these formative years, the seeds of a unique Australian identity were planted, one rooted in mateship, resilience, and a love of the land. World War I and the ANZAC legacy. When World War I broke out in 1914, Australia was a young nation eager to prove itself on the world stage. Thousands of young men volunteered to fight for Britain, believing they were embarking on an adventure for king and country. But the horrors of war were far beyond their expectations. Gallipoli and the ANZAC spirit picture a young Australian soldier landing at Gallipoli. Confusion, fear, and the sound of gunfire all around him. For months, the soldiers endured horrific conditions, and many lost their lives. Despite the devastating losses, something powerful emerged from Gallipoli: the ANZAC spirit, a symbol of bravery, sacrifice, and camaraderie. This legacy became central to Australia's identity, celebrated every year on ANZAC Day, a reminder of the nation's resilience and its place in the world. Australia's role in the war, impact on national identity. ANZAC Day. The war left deep emotional scars, but it also shaped Australia's growing sense of nationhood. On the home front, women stepped into new roles, and Australians began to see themselves as more than just a far-off colony of Britain. The Great Depression and Recovery. In the years following the war, Australia faced a new challenge: the Great Depression of the 1930s. Factories closed, unemployment skyrocketed, and for many Australians, survival became a daily struggle. Life during the Depression: imagine walking through the streets of Sydney or Melbourne in the early 1930s. People lined up for food, jobs were scarce, and entire families were left homeless. It was a time of great hardship, but also one of resilience. Communities banded together, and despite the dire circumstances, there was a sense that better days would come. Economic struggles, social impact, lessons learned politically. Australia was in turmoil, with governments struggling to find solutions to the crisis. But out of the Depression came important lessons that would influence Australia's social policies in the future. Ideas about workers' rights, welfare, and the role of government in ensuring economic stability.
World War II and Australia's transformation. When World War II erupted in 1939, Australia was again drawn into a global conflict. This time, however, the war came much closer to home. In 1942, Japanese forces bombed the northern city of Darwin, and the fear of invasion became very real for Australians.
The Kokoda Campaign and the Home Front. In the jungles of Papua New Guinea, Australian soldiers fought one of the toughest battles of the war, the Kokoda Campaign. Imagine the dense jungle, the rain, the mud, and the relentless enemy. Many of these soldiers were barely trained, but their determination turned the tide of the battle, solidifying Australia's role as a key player in the Pacific theater. Back home, women played a vital role in keeping the country running, taking over jobs in factories and farms while men were away at war. This shift would have a lasting impact on Australia's social fabric. Australia's role in the Pacific, post-war changes, economic growth. World War II marked a turning point for Australia. After the war, the country experienced an economic boom. New alliances were forged, most notably with the United States. And Australia's immigration policies opened the doors to millions of new arrivals, forever changing the nation's cultural landscape. As we look back on Australia's journey through the 20th century, it's clear that this story is one of overcoming adversity, adapting to change, and building a nation from the ground up. From the early struggles of federation to the battles of 2 world wars and the economic challenges that shaped its policies, Australia's history is rich with lessons that continue to resonate today. Australia's story is far from over, and its past offers valuable insights for the future. If this video has inspired you, I encourage you to learn more about the history that shaped this remarkable country. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content.